Beyond the gate's spoilers tease that June arrived in Fairmont Crest like a ghost walking backwards through time, her presence unsettling, her name unfamiliar, yet carrying the weight of stories not yet told. Her eyes mirrored a sadness too deep for a stranger, and her voice, though soft, carried the eerie confidence of someone who had returned to a place they never should have left. She spoke little. She smiled less. But she watched everything. From the beginning, Naomi Hamilton sensed there was more to June than she let on. The investigative journalist had long carried a personal grudge against the DUPREE family, and June's sudden appearance in their orbit set off silent alarms. Fairmont Crest had many secrets, and Naomi had dedicated her life to unraveling them. June, with her haunted gaze and quiet knowledge of places she shouldn't know, seemed to hold one of the town's deepest mysteries. When June was treated at the local medical outpost after a minor fall, the nurse on duty flagged her file for an emergency blood test. Naomi, who had contacts in the clinic from her prior investigations, intercepted the results. Her heart nearly stopped. June's DNA showed over 90% compatibility with Bill, the aging patriarch of the Crest and one of its most powerful and enigmatic figures. Bill, known for his silence and unassailable presence, had long been the center of rumors, especially about the death of a woman decades earlier. The woman had no grave, no official record of death, just whispers. Miranda DUPREE. The surname triggered something in Naomi. She dove into the archives and discovered that Miranda had been a distant relative of Bill's late wife and, more importantly, had disappeared around the same time a newborn girl was erased from the hospital's adoption system. No legal record. No name. Just a baby who vanished. Naomi took the information straight to Bill under the guise of an interview. She mentioned Miranda. His hand shook. Only for a second, but long enough. Bill deflected her questions with polite evasion, but Naomi had seen enough. The man had secrets. And June was likely the biggest one. Later that week, Bill summoned June to the old DUPREE estate, a mansion choked in ivy and thyme. Inside, he led her to a locked room sealed for more than 20 years. It was dusty and untouched, but the cradle in the corner had never been moved. In the dim light, Bill spoke with a voice cracked by age and guilt. "You were never supposed to come back," he said. June didn't flinch. She had known in fragments and instinct, but now she needed confirmation. Bill confessed everything. Miranda DUPREE had been his mistress, and when she became pregnant, his wife discovered the affair. A violent confrontation followed. Miranda fled, vanishing into obscurity with the child. Bill never saw either again. To protect the family's name, he faked Miranda's death. The story of a fatal fall was a lie built to keep shame at bay. June listened in silence, her expression unreadable. When Bill finished, she didn't speak. She simply left. But the consequences of that confession had only just begun. Naomi continued digging, piecing together missing hospital records, old train manifests, and one photo, a grainy image of Miranda holding a newborn baby. The eyes in that photo were unmistakable. They belonged to June. Meanwhile, an anonymous letter arrived at Naomi's home. Inside, Miranda's final medical records, a partial paternity test, and a message written in stark block letters. "You are not the only one chasing truth. But some truths must stay buried." Chelsea Hamilton, a friend of Naomi and an ally in past investigations, agreed to help. Together, they traced the sender to a series of false identities, a man hiding in plain sight, working odd jobs around town, always watching. He was June's half-brother. The revelation came from a DNA sample Naomi had preserved from a discarded coffee cup. It matched both Bill and June. The mystery man had the same biological markers but from a different mother. His name had once been Peter Rains, but in Fairmont Crest, he went by Ethan Vaughn. He had been following June since the day she stepped foot in town, not to harm her, but to decide whether she was a threat to the inheritance he believed should be his. With this new layer exposed, the DUPREE legacy ignited into chaos. June was not only the hidden daughter of Bill, but also a direct heir to the crumbling empire that many in town had quietly prepared to claim. Her existence threatened everything. June refused to stay silent. She stepped forward at a town meeting and declared her identity. The room split. Some applauded her courage, others whispered of conspiracies and lies. The remaining members of the DUPREE family rejected her outright, accusing her of manipulation. But Bill confirmed it all. He stood beside June, frail but unshaken. He read aloud a letter Miranda had written but never sent, found hidden in the locked room. It spoke of love, betrayal, and her fear that June would one day return to a world that would hate her for merely being born. Bill ended his speech with a public apology. "I failed as a father," he said, "but I will not fail again as a man." His statement sent shockwaves through Fairmont Crest. Lawsuits were filed. The DUPREE estate was frozen pending legal review. But more than that, it awakened old ghosts. Naomi received another letter, this one with a photo of a bloodied scarf and the words, "Miranda didn't fall. She was pushed." Chelsea and Naomi confronted Bill. This time, he didn't answer. Instead, he handed them a key. It belonged to a safety deposit box in a bank outside of town. Inside were documents, recordings, and a journal belonging to Miranda. The final entry was a warning. Someone in the DUPREE circle had threatened her life the night she vanished. A name was scribbled, then scratched out so violently the paper tore. June was no longer just a lost daughter. She was the surviving witness of a legacy built on blood. And someone was willing to kill again to make sure she never found out the whole truth. The gates had opened. And what lay beyond them was not just family history. It was a reckoning. The scandal shattered Fairmont Crest's carefully polished surface. As June's identity became public and Bill's past was dragged into the light, the other DUPREE heirs began circling like vultures. Lawsuits flooded in, challenging her claim, attacking Bill's credibility, questioning the DNA. But none could erase the blood connection now confirmed by both science and confession. Naomi and Chelsea worked tirelessly to protect June, building a legal defense, reaching out to sympathetic members of the community, and tracing the final pieces of Miranda DUPREE's last days. But while lawyers waged war in courtrooms, something darker stirred beneath the estate. June began receiving cryptic messages slipped under her door at night. One was written in her mother's handwriting, a flawless forgery. It read, "Trust no one near the old vineyard." Another note came scorched at the edges, a single line, "You are not the first they tried to silence." Ethan Vaughn, still operating under his alias, reappeared. He confronted June in a library, claiming he wanted to talk. What began as a cautious conversation turned into revelation. Ethan didn't want the estate anymore. He wanted the truth. He believed their father's confession had triggered someone inside the DUPREE family to act. Someone who had murdered Miranda. He showed June a journal entry from his mother's diaries, recently uncovered in a storage unit. It mentioned a confrontation between Miranda and a woman named Celeste DUPREE, Bill's sister-in-law and longtime executor of the family trust. Miranda had accused Celeste of poisoning her pregnancy. The next day, Miranda disappeared. Naomi and Chelsea followed that thread and discovered Celeste had taken an extended trip the week of Miranda's disappearance. A series of hotel records showed she was nowhere near the estate when Miranda allegedly fell. But a gardener's testimony, long buried in a legal deposition, told another story. He had seen Miranda arguing with a woman in the orchard at twilight. That woman matched Celeste's description, down to her signature gray scarf. That scarf was the one sent anonymously to Naomi, stained with blood. Pressure mounted. Celeste remained silent, letting her attorneys speak. But her cold demeanor made her look increasingly guilty. Meanwhile, Bill withdrew from public view. The weight of decades of guilt, public shame, and the looming health crisis of his declining memory began eroding the man he once was. June didn't retreat. She demanded access to the full DUPREE archives. In one of the locked cabinets, she found a tape. Labeled only 1987, it was an old audio reel. Naomi had it restored. The recording was chilling. It was a therapy session, private, meant to be destroyed. On it, Miranda's voice trembled as she admitted her fears. Celeste said the baby would ruin everything. That I was a stain on the family. She said I would disappear before they let me raise a bastard DUPREE. Chelsea played the recording for Ethan. He went pale. He remembered Celeste visiting his mother weeks before her death. He remembered her saying, "Some bloodlines aren't meant to continue." Bill, now mostly confined to bed, finally admitted the rest. He had known Celeste was capable of manipulation, but never imagined she would act. When Miranda vanished, he believed she'd fled out of fear, but he suspected otherwise. He said nothing to protect the family. His silence, he admitted, was his greatest crime. Celeste was arrested under suspicion of conspiracy to commit murder and obstruction of justice. The evidence, while circumstantial, was powerful. The trial became the center of national attention. June, now recognized not only as Miranda's daughter, but as a key figure in one of the most shocking cases in the state's history, remained composed. She refused interviews, declined television offers, and focused on restoring her mother's memory. Ethan testified against Celeste. It broke something in him, but he said he owed the truth to both June and the mother who raised him in fear. Naomi, exhausted but resolute, published her final piece, an investigative exposé titled "The Woman Behind the Gate." It detailed Miranda's life, her love, her erasure, and her daughter's fight to exist. Chelsea opened a foundation in Miranda's name, focused on protecting women forced into silence by powerful families. As the estate was finally settled, June received one last envelope. Inside was a letter. It was dated 1 week before Miranda disappeared. Addressed to June, never mailed. My darling girl. If you ever read this, then I was brave enough to write it, but not brave enough to send it. Your father loved you, even if he didn't know how to show it. If they take me away, know it was because I told the truth. Never let them convince you your life is a shame. You are the storm they feared would come. June folded the letter and pressed it to her chest. Later that week, she stood at the base of the old vineyard, now cleared and reclaimed. The land Miranda once walked. Fairmont Crest had buried too many truths. She would not let it bury her. June took the stage at the memorial for Miranda DUPREE, and with Naomi, Chelsea, and Ethan standing behind her, she began her speech. For too long, the wrong people told our stories. For too long, silence was mistaken for peace. But truth is not quiet. Truth is loud. And I am here, still standing, because someone tried to erase me. They failed. The crowd rose. The DUPREE legacy had fallen. But from its ashes, something truer had emerged. And June was its name. Snow fell again over Fairmont Crest, as if the town needed another veil to hide behind. But no storm could erase the scars left by the unraveling of the DUPREE legacy. June walked the edges of the vineyard where her mother had once stood, now cleared of lies and vines alike. The earth had changed, and so had she. But even as the truth gave her power, it brought with it a deeper danger, the kind that doesn't make headlines. 3 weeks after Celeste's conviction, a former DUPREE estate caretaker named Morris came forward. His hands trembled as he recounted a story from over 20 years ago. One night, when he heard a woman scream inside the greenhouse, a place later sealed off and forgotten. At the time, Morris had been paid to keep quiet, but with Celeste behind bars and Bill's health declining, he feared he'd waited too long. Naomi and Chelsea accompanied him to the site. Hidden beneath floorboards warped by time, they discovered fragments of a bracelet, gold, inscribed with the letter M. It matched one Miranda had worn in a photo from June's birth. More than that, they found bone fragments, carefully buried in a child-sized box. But the most disturbing item was the journal. Wrapped in oilcloth, preserved from weather, it was filled with Miranda's final entries, many never finished. Scrawled lines. Half-thoughts. Paranoia building. The last readable sentence: "They said June will be safe if I disappear." I don't believe them. Bill was dying. With his memory fading faster than he could speak, Naomi decided to confront him with the evidence. But when she arrived, she found Ethan already there. The scene was quiet. No shouting. No tears. Just a son asking his father why. Bill turned to Naomi and whispered, "I didn't kill Miranda. But I knew what they were capable of. I let her go, thinking they wouldn't follow. That was my mistake." A day later, he passed away in his sleep. The news broke the next morning, and with it, a sealed addendum to his will was made public. June was to inherit not only the main estate, but also full access to a second property long believed to be abandoned. The Willows house. Located deep in the forest behind the original DUPREE lands, the Willows was once a recovery retreat. But the paperwork indicated that it had operated unofficially as a sanctuary for women, those hiding from family, threats, or secrets. June, Naomi, Chelsea, and Ethan visited it together. Inside, they found evidence that Miranda had been there after her disappearance. Old patient logs. A blood-stained letter. A nurse's name Margaret Lay mentioned repeatedly. The woman had since died, but Naomi tracked down her granddaughter, who confirmed that Margaret took in a woman who looked like she had been running her whole life. And then came the final revelation. In the basement of the Willows, they discovered a sealed room. Not hidden, just locked. Inside was a hospital cot, rusted medical equipment, and an infant bracelet marked with the name, Mara. Another child. June's heart stopped. The documents nearby confirmed it. Miranda had given birth again, likely under a false name. A girl named Mara. The records ended there. No mention of what happened to the child, only a loose invoice from a private courier dated weeks after the birth. The implications were staggering. If Mara survived, she would be June's full sister. Another heir. Another life born in the shadows of the DUPREE empire. Naomi cautioned against immediate public disclosure. The people behind Miranda's disappearance were never just Celeste and Bill. There were other names, other signatures. Some of those names belonged to families still in power, still living in Fairmont Crest. June agreed. For now, the search for Mara would be private. But they weren't alone in their pursuit. Someone else had visited the Willows. In the dust beside the cot was a fresh boot print, smaller, feminine. A note had been left in the entryway. It read, "You think the truth ends here. It doesn't." The handwriting matched the earlier threats sent to Naomi. Chelsea reinforced her home. Naomi moved into a secured building downtown. June changed her number. Ethan began digging through offshore records, looking for any hint of a child sent away in the same time window as Mara's birth. Late one night, June received a phone call. Blocked number. A female voice. "Stop looking for her." Before June could respond, the line went dead. She turned to Naomi the next morning, trembling. "It's not over." Naomi nodded. "No. But we're not alone either." In the months that followed, the Willows was transformed into a center for women escaping dangerous legacies. June dedicated her inheritance to its revival. Chelsea became the director. Naomi, its lead advisor. And in a quiet corner office, a wall was covered with maps, names, and lines of red string. One strand pointed to a foster family in Colorado. Another to an unsolved child abduction case in upstate New York. A third to a woman arrested under an alias with no known origin. All were named Mara. June stared at the wall every morning. Her mother's final gift wasn't just the truth. It was the beginning of another story. And June would see it through. Whatever waited beyond the next gate, she would face it. Not as a shadow of the DUPREEs, but as the storm they never saw coming.